Have you ever felt like you were living in Wonderland? Hi, I'm Alice, and I feel like that every day. However, the wonders around me are very upsetting. My parents were always very strict and forbade me from doing anything. They watched my every move and called me even if I was late by even a minute. It sounds ridiculous, but Dad sometimes met me after college and walked me home. My parents even forbade me from moving to a student dormitory. Long story short, sometimes their wonderful care made me want to scream. But I knew that my parents loved me and didn't want to fight with them. One day, when they were out, I invited Hannah to our home. She was my only friend. We had been friends since high school. Hannah came with her younger brother. We turned on a game for him on a tablet and went to the kitchen. I made coffee and put a pie I had recently baked on the table. Making a lot of drinks and pastries was my hobby. The holidays were starting the next day, and Hannah told me that she was going to spend at my youth camp. It sounded really cool, and deep down, I envied her. My parents wouldn't let me go anywhere, and I always had to stay at home during the holidays. When Hannah was about to leave, it turned out that her brother was nowhere to be found. I went to look for him on the second floor when suddenly I noticed that the door to my dad's office was ajar. My parents never let me go there. I carefully pushed the door open and looked inside. Hannah's brother immediately came out to meet me. Wow, I want such cool monitors too! I didn't understand what he was talking about at first, but then I noticed a table with several computer monitors on it. At that moment, Hannah came up to the second floor too, and I quickly closed the door. After seeing the guest out, I sat down to watch a movie, but I couldn't stop thinking about the office. Why had my parents always forbidden me from going there? And why there were so many monitors on the table? Dad usually locked the door to his office, but that day, he had probably forgotten about it. I wanted to go back there. What if I never got such an opportunity again? I hesitated a bit longer, but in the end, curiosity won out. There was about an hour left before my parents were supposed to return, and I headed back to Dad's office. What I saw on the monitors shocked me. Our courtyard and almost all the rooms in our house were showing in real time. I could understand having cameras outside the house, but why were they in the rooms as well? The main computer was password protected, but I quickly guessed it. It was my birthday. There were a bunch of folders on the desktop, and when I saw their contents, it was a real shock. There were hundreds of photos of me, sleeping, eating, running, walking on the park. There was also a couple of photos of me as a kid. I was about 3 years old in them, and a girl of the same age was standing next to me. I didn't remember having such a friend as a child at all, although that was the least of my worries at that moment. I kept investigating and found a program that broadcast the image from the monitors to my parents' phone. I never would have thought that my parents were constantly watching me, even in my worst nightmares. That wasn't normal. All of a sudden, I heard the front door open downstairs. I realized that my parents had returned, but I didn't leave the office. They already knew that I was there anyway. When Mom and Dad came in, they looked guilty. What on earth is this? Care to explain what's going on? Alice, we're just really worried about you. Someone should always watch over you. We love you very much and don't want anything to happen to you. Their words sounded like complete nonsense to me, and I got angry. What dangers are there in our own house? You aren't worried about me. You're paranoid. They mumbled something in response. I realized that I wouldn't get anything out of them, and I went to my room. I found a couple of small cameras there, smashed them and threw them in the trash. Things had gone too far. Enough was enough. And I had been putting up with it all for too long already. During the night, I decided that things had to change. So, in the early morning, I threw some things into my backpack and quietly left the house. I also turned off my phone. What if my parents were also watching me through it? I went to see Hannah. At some point, I felt like someone was watching me again. I quickly turned around, but I didn't notice anything suspicious. Maybe my parents had noticed that I left after all. In the end, I decided that it was all in my head. When I came to Hannah, I told her everything and asked her to take me to the camp with her. Of course, I'll try to help you, but I don't think there are any places left. And we had to pay for it in advance. Wait, I have an idea. My Aunt Angela works there as a cook. She could help you get a job at the camp. That made me very happy. I could really use some money. Hannah called her aunt, and she arranged everything. They hired me to work in the cafeteria. I spent the night before the camp at Hannah's place, and tweets at every rustle. I felt like my parents will find me any minute. But everything went well. And the next day, we left for the camp. It was in the mountains, right on the shore of a lake. It was an astonishingly beautiful place. Hannah immediately introduced me to her aunt, who turned out to be very young. That wasn't how I imagined her. Angela had piercings, dreadlocks, and a lot of tattoos. She immediately dragged me to the cafeteria and told me what I was supposed to do. Make tea and coffee, serve drinks to the guests, and help in the kitchen. I knew how to do it all, so I had zero issues from the start. Even the head chef praised me. There was basically no connection in the mountains, which was also a plus. But I still didn't dare to turn on my smartphone and use an old phone Angela had given me. By the way, Angela and I quickly got along. Despite her appearance, she turned out to be very nice. While we worked, Angela would tell me about climbing the mountains, scuba diving, and even paragliding. I listened to her with my mouth wide open. I had been living such a boring life. I realized how much I missed out on because of my parents' constant control. In the afternoon, during our breaks, we completed obstacle courses with everyone else and played different games. And in the evenings, we sat around the campfire or went to parties. At first, life without parental supervision seemed unusual to me, but I quickly got used to it. I started to talk more to everyone and even flirt with guys. My parents would have had a stroke if they saw me. One day, new workers came to our camp, the Johnsons. Jack worked as an animator, and Gwen, like me, helped in the kitchen. They turned out to be very cool and fun. Jack was the coolest guy at all parties. We quickly became friends. However, Angela didn't like them for some reason. One day, when I was making fresh orange juice, Gwen came up to me and asked me for something. She said she and Jack had a daughter they hadn't seen in a long time. She should be coming here soon, and we want to give her nice gifts. You look a lot like her, especially your figure. Could you come to the town with us and try on a few things? There was a town not far from the camp that I hadn't yet been to. I had been wanting to see it for a long time, so of course I agreed, especially since I had a day off. I took my backpack and warned Angela that I was leaving and would be back by evening. Are you going to the city with those two? I rolled my eyes. What have they done to you? They seem nice. I don't know, I just don't like them. That's all. Angela and I had never disagreed before. We got to the city while listening to loud music and Jack's jokes. I was in a great mood. The shopping malls in that city were small, but we spent a lot of time in them. Jack and Gwen had collected a whole pile of gifts for their daughter. It seems like they were buying everything they saw. Headphones, a PlayStation, a teddy bear, some notebooks. I wondered how they had enough money for all that. If they were rich, why did they work part-time at the summer camp? Then we got the clothes. I tried shorts, tops, dresses. Looking at me, the Johnsons look emotional, like if buying absolutely everything. It suits you so well. At some point, I remembered Angela's words. Now the couple weirded me out a bit as well. Why were they looking at me like that? Or maybe I just reminded them of their daughter a lot? When the shopping was over, I felt tired. Honestly, I would prefer making 100 cups of coffee. While Jack was paying for everything, Gwen went to get us ice cream. I was changing in the fitting room and suddenly noticed that my phone was missing. The one that Angela had given me. I was sure I had taken it with me. I had used it to check the time just minutes before that. I searched the entire fitting room and even the store, but the phone was nowhere to be found. Had it been stolen? Don't worry, we'll just buy you a new one. Do you want it right now? I forced a smile and refused. They were weird after all. Why had they suddenly decided to give me such an expensive gift? After we ate ice cream, Gwen suggested we take a walk around the city and go to a local restaurant for a snack. But I wanted to get back to the camp as soon as possible and lied, saying that I didn't want to eat. They didn't insist and we drove back. The car was full of packages, and there was barely enough space for me in the back seat. I even had to put my backpack on my knees. I was lost in thought and hadn't noticed at first that we were going in the wrong direction. When I realized that, I looked out the window and saw that we had missed our turn. It was like Jack had read my mind. I know a shortcut. We'll arrive just in time for dinner. I had nothing to occupy myself and didn't want to talk, so I kept looking out the window. So this time, I immediately noticed we had left the city. We definitely weren't getting closer to the camp. Where are we going? They didn't answer, and I grew worried. Hey! Gwen turned around and looked at me affectionately. Don't worry, everything is as it should be now. The three of us will go far, far away and no one will find us. I didn't understand anything. What did it all mean? Where were they taking me? Daughter, didn't you like the gifts we bought you? Or are you still upset about your phone? I suddenly noticed that Gwen was holding my phone in her hands. They had stolen it from me. I was really scared. They were acting creepy and I started shaking. They were crazy. I should have listened to Angela. Jack was driving at breakneck speed. I clutched my backpack and tried to think of what to do. But then, I suddenly remembered something. My smartphone was still in my backpack, and the crazy people didn't know about it. I prayed the battery hadn't died. I carefully took out my smartphone and tried to turn it on. And it worked! I immediately texted Hannah and sent her my location. But then, I started to get notifications about missed calls from my parents. Luckily, the roar of the engine drowned all the sounds. After hesitating for a second, I texted my mother as well. After a while, we stopped at a gas station. I wanted to get out of the car, but the door was locked. When I demanded to be let out, Gwen just smiled and shook her head. I wanted to cry. What had I got into? When Jack returned to the car, we suddenly heard sirens. Police cars stopped at the gas station. They quickly surrounded us and the cops grabbed Jack and Gwen. They let me out of the car and started questioning me. Soon, a car drove up to us. Angela and Hannah got out of it. They looked scared out of their minds. I called the police as soon as I read your message. I hugged my friend and burst into tears with relief. And then another car stopped next to us. I recognized it at once. During the recent weeks, I had been terrified that my parents would find me. But now, I was very glad they had come. When Mom saw me, she burst into tears too. And they finally told me the whole truth. It turned out that many years ago, Johnsons had been my parents' best friends. They had had girls at the same time. However, something tragic happened to the Johnsons' daughter, and she had died. At first, they had grieved for her, and then they had gone crazy. They started to think that you were their daughter, Alice. The Johnsons asked us to give you to them. They even offered us money. We were terribly afraid that they will steal you. One time, we even had to go to the police. But Jack has rich and influential relatives. So, they were simply sent to a clinic for treatment and quickly released. We hadn't heard from them for a while, but then they had shown up again. Half of the photos you saw hadn't been taken by us. They were the ones who had sent them to us. They threatened that sooner or later, they would take you away. That's why we were so worried about you. We just wanted you to be safe. I listened with my mouth wide open. So that's who that girl next to me in the photo had been. We don't know how they found you in the camp. Even we didn't know where you were. By the way, we were going crazy with worry. You don't do that again, Alice. At that moment, I remembered that when I had left home, I had felt like someone was watching me. It must have been Jack and Gwen. They'd followed me, found out that I was in the camp, and got a job there on purpose. Thanks to my parents' explanation, everything became clear to the police. They arrested the Johnsons, and we found out later that they had been sent to the clinic for a long time. After coming back from the camp, I moved out of my parents' house to a student dormitory. We had a fight again, but I stood my ground. My parents are still constantly calling me and trying to control me. What do you think I should do? How can I convince my parents that I'm no longer in danger?